Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode. Thank you very much for joining me. You are very welcome. It is Tuesday, the 4th of November, 2025. And oh my goodness, is the time not racing by so quickly? Like, do you feel this? I can't believe that it's November already and the Christmas adverts are already on the television. Not that I try and watch the television very much, but sometimes I turn it on and I just think, oh my goodness, another 2 months of adverts of great big huge family gatherings and all this food, and it just seems, I don't know, it just seems so weird. Nobody seems to have any money. Everything is just kind of slowing down a bit out there, and these great big family get-togethers, I just think, oh my goodness. Anyway, it's a lot. So you if you don't enjoy all of that stuff, you are not alone, I can tell you. Now, it is incredibly mild at the moment. I think we're having the tailwinds from that awful Hurricane Melissa over in Jamaica, which just looked absolutely awful. I was thinking the other day that I was sort of moaning about being on the plot and it was quite windy and it was about 30 miles an hour or something, gusting to sort of 37, and things slam and the netting blows and the chickens all get blown around. And that just pales into complete insignificance compared to the hurricanes out there. So pretty awful. I'm finally feeling better. I've been ill for weeks. I don't know if you've noticed on the podcast, but I had something about a month ago and I was really sick and then got over that. And then I had something else. And that was just, I don't even know what that was. It was just horrible. And overnight, it's kind of cleared. So I've actually felt a bit more like myself today, which has been amazing. I've been waging war with my GP practice over my HRT. Honestly, I don't know if you have similar problems, but just sort of getting these issues sorted, it's like pushing water uphill. I have never known it to be so complicated and difficult to get treatment for something that half of the entire world's population is going to experience in some form or another. And considering the effort that GPs put into promoting certain things, and then when you actually have a problem and you try and get help, it's like getting blood out of a stone. Anyway, I don't want to sound really moany because I'm better and it's Tuesday and it's mild and it's been sunny and everything is fine. Some really great news. You're going to be so beyond thrilled to hear this. I found the radio code for my radio. And I won't bore you with all of the long stories, but if you've been listening, you knew that we ended up disconnecting the battery because the alarm went off because my window broke and we had to break into the car. And the great news is that it sorted out my radio problem. Only then I couldn't find the code to reset it. So I found it over the weekend, and that is amazing. So I have had the radio on for the last few days, blasting out my Madonna CD. Takes me back to the 90s. And you know what? When everything feels like it's going to hell in a handcart, you can't beat going back to when you were a teenager and life was so much simpler. And I've also found my sad lamp over the weekend as well. These things are amazing. Like if you have seasonal affective disorder and you really struggle at this time of year, and I really do. So I'm mostly eating biscuits. That seems to be, I suddenly have this overwhelming need to eat biscuits. And I'm like, oh God, it's autumn again. And we had a week last week where I don't think we had any sunshine at all. So all this advice about, oh, get outside, get into nature. It's like I work outside. I'm in nature all day, every day. But if there is no sunshine, it is not going to make me feel any better. So I found my sad lamp and I put it on for half an hour in the morning when I'm having a cup of tea or some breakfast or whatever, because I've kind of stopped drinking coffee as well. Thought that might be interesting just to see if I can do that for a bit. So I put it on in the morning and it's great. You're not supposed to use it in the afternoon, apparently, because it can mess with your internal light clock or something. Not scientific advice, but anyway, if you do suffer, I can highly recommend them. So it has been incredibly busy. I have been planting out more hydrangeas that I had actually in my garden, plus the other shrubs that I bought a couple of weeks ago in the wholesaler plant sale. And the soil is really lovely. And, I've been really down on this soil in the new area of the plot that Nigel lifted the turf for me. And just thinking, oh, it's really not very good and it's not been cultivated, it's not blah, blah, blah. Well, actually, it's really quite nice. So I'm not feeling as worried about putting stuff down in that section as I was a few weeks ago. I've also planted out a pittosporum that I dug up from my own garden. And I've taken that up there, and that has kind of joined the foliage bed. So I actually look like, well, no, I am someone that now has a dedicated foliage bed. And if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, oh, what foliage are you doing? I'd be like, what? I haven't got any foliage. So now I actually have a 14-meter by 1.2-meter dedicated foliage bed, and I am just shoving stuff in there in the proper professional style, obviously, but it is just filling up now, which is very exciting. And I've been clearing out some of the beds that had annuals in this year. I have been leaving it as long as possible so that the beds aren't lying empty. I know I yak on about protecting the soil and doing everything all about the soil, but sometimes I lift stuff or I weed stuff, and then there's this area of soil, and then I don't do anything with it because you can't always sow a cover crop or you can't always put cardboard down. It's very windy where I am, and you then have to go around and find loads of bricks, and it all just becomes a bit epic. So what I've started to do is just leave things in the soil until I actually want to use the bed, and it really doesn't matter if it's weeds or anything because they're all, they're feeding the soil, they're all helping out. So I leave them as long as possible, and then I lift them, and then I transplant things in. Now, I think you are supposed to wait a week after you've cleared a bed out, wait for any seeds that you've disturbed to germinate, and then hoe through it, and then plant. But at this time of year, I'm not finding that that is an issue. And we don't have masses of weed seeds in there anyway. There's a few like token little things, and then there's obviously the nettles. I have been lifting, dividing, and replanting my Achillea. So if you're a regular listener, you'll know that I'm moving quite a few, or most of my perennials from the sort of the cultivated area by the compost bins down onto the new section because they're big enough, tough enough plants to cope with the slightly reduced quality of the soil. And then I'm going to put all the new plugs and annuals and special things in the cultivated soil. So I had great fun with the Achillea. These were actually, I'm sorry if you've listened to this and I've told you about this before, but these were tiny, tiny plugs that I bought from J. Parker's about 5 years ago. And they hung around in trays for ages because I didn't get around to doing anything with them. And then I put them on the plot in 2024. And this year, they're absolute monsters. Monsters. They've all grown into each other, they've spread everywhere. And there was this really dense clump, which for quite a bit of the year I was looking at it going, oh, I got the plant spacings right on that. And then they had this just enormous growth spurt, and they've just all sort of congested each other, and it all just got really messy. So I've lifted the whole lot. I've put a little tiny reel on my Instagram if you want to see all the pictures of that. It's not wildly exciting, but it's not the worst one I've ever done. And moved those guys over to the new area. So what started out as like, I don't know, maybe a dozen, no, less than that, maybe half a dozen plug plants. I've managed to get 24 decent sized plants, and they have gone over to the new section and gone in. I've also moved my eryngiums over. They're actually a really useful perennial. I don't know if you are growing those. I think they're really lovely. I've got two different types. I bought half a dozen of the bluey ones and half a dozen of the silvery ones, again in plugs, like 2019, and they've just hit the ground running, and they've been lovely. They've made very tall plants, which I then had to retrospectively stake, so I know what they're up to now. I'll be prepared for next year. But in the event that you can't sell them, they dry really, really nicely. And I now have an enormous collection of dried flowers that I didn't manage to sell this year, that I have not managed to sell as dried flowers either, but they look nice. So yeah, that's what I've done with those. Um, I have also been recording how long it takes me to do all of these jobs. As you know, I'm a bit of a geek and I have spreadsheets and I love collecting data. And you are supposed to be timing how long it takes you to do everything so you can work out your cost production analysis or something like that. So I've been writing it all down, and it is quite informative because there are some jobs I did and I would have sworn to myself, oh, that only took half an hour. And I look at the phone, it's like, oh, it's an hour and a half. So actually, your mind can play tricks on you when you're doing stuff like that. And I often think it's taken me less time than it actually has, which is probably why I'm always late for everything. I've moved some peonies, and yes, it is possible to move peonies. It is definitely possible. Everybody says, oh, you can't move peonies. It's like, well, you can move peonies, they're fine. And I just try and keep as much of the soil around the roots as possible when I'm moving them and they don't have a shock. Like, don't lift them out of the ground and shake every single bit of soil off and then move them. I think it's easier just to dig up a clump. The leaf mold compost bay is coming along really nicely. And this year is the first year that I've actually put a pallet on top of the compost bay to stop Moley and little Mo going in there and scratching all of the compost out. Because I made a ton of leaf mold compost last year, and there's not a shred of evidence because the chickens went through and just rampaged through all of it. Obviously, sliced and diced it really nicely and then just scattered it everywhere. So now I have a pallet on top. So it does make filling up the bays a little bit complicated because I built the bays inside one of the enclosures. So you've got to drag the 1-ton bag out of the car, up a slope, through a fence panel, down a slope, which is really treacherous at the moment, to the bay, lift the pallet off, and it's incredibly heavy, upturn the whole 1-ton bag in, put the pallet on, and then make your way out. So it's pretty epic, but I don't really want to move them now. So I can't do anything about that. Now, my nettles are having another growth spurt. I'm so proud of these guys. Like, I really feel sometimes like I should just pivot the business completely and just do nettle tea because they're just absolutely incredible and they're beautiful. And just out of interest, I cut a stem the other day and I put it into an arrangement because I'm messing around with whatever's left on the plot, making all these little arrangements. And it wasn't a hand tie, it was just a vase arrangement. And I put this nettle stem in it and it had flowers on. It looked really pretty. I mean, it did obviously stick out because there was only one of them. And it's like, oh, there's a nettle in there. But the point is, after that was about 2 weeks ago, I think, it's still going strong. It looks absolutely perfect. It looks like I cut it yesterday, whereas everything else in the vase has had to be thrown away. So I'm thinking, oh, I could be a bit of a niche there. I could be the lady that puts nettles into bouquets and see what happens. It is also an indicator that there's tons of nitrogen in the soil, which is not really that surprising. The nettles are doing so well on it. So I really ought to get more veg going up there, which I was going to mention that later, actually. Thank you to Leanne for some suggestions. She contacted me on Instagram and she suggested a couple of podcasts I could try and also reminded me about Perennial, which is a UK charity helping people in horticulture and helps their families as well. They're a really lovely charity and they have some gardens in the UK that you can visit and they have sort of like a helpline. So if you're struggling, you can ring them and just chat to somebody. So they're a really lovely charity. Now, I've been looking into intercropping plants to maximize the spacing. So, just when I thought it couldn't get any more complicated in terms of working out yield per square meter, there are growers out there intercropping like bulbs and perennials, annuals and shrubs. It's a whole lot to think about, but I am thinking about it. I certainly did think about it for the shrubs, but I know there are growers in the States who are definitely intercropping amongst their perennials, which seems interesting to me. And I would quite like to do this with some veg. I did have a bit of a go last year. I put some garlic in amongst my rudbeckia and I did get some garlic cloves, but they were really, really small. And I'm sort of weighing up the effort required in order to peel them and chop them when they are that small. So I'm wondering if there's a bit of a downside to do it in doing it, in that you've got just too much competition going on, and not everybody's going to come out on top. And the rudbeckias clearly did, to the detriment of the garlic. So I'll have to have a think about that. Now, I spent this afternoon with my Dahlia mentor, Richard Bailey. And I do realise that I said to you, I don't think I was going to talk about Dahlias anymore because I've kind of had enough of them. And I went to see Richard this afternoon. He's offloading a whole load of Dahlias that he doesn't want anymore, that either the the wrong color, or the flowers do the wrong thing, or they're just not right, not what he wants. So he's giving them to me, which is amazing. And what was I going to say about that? Oh, yes. So it basically reignited my total passion and commitment and love for dahlias, because I think when you talk to someone else that grows them, and I'm learning all the varieties now, slowly, slowly, I was like, oh my God, I love dahlias so much. But I feel like I can't do any more Instagram posts about them because I just will bore everybody to tears. And I probably should stop talking about them on the podcast. But I did have a really nice afternoon. And he gave me a couple more Le Feu de Soleil, which is the ready orange ones, 7 Canora Valentine, which had these enormous red heads, and I think they're going to look stunning in bouquets. And then 3 Landcrest, which is like a white, I think it's a ball. Don't think it's a pom. I think it's a ball. And they are very, very beautiful. And they all of those actually need dividing. He's got another 13 plants for me called Hapet Champagne. And they are really very beautiful. Again, those Fims that I now love. And I also got 4 yellow ones. We couldn't find a label for those. And I had to stop at that point because I couldn't fit anything else in my car, because I also had to take the wheelbarrow in order to get them from his plot into my car. So I need to go back another time to go and get the Hapet champagnes. But it was very nice to catch up with him and see what he's still got flowering on the plot and how things are looking. And he's growing a fabulous one called Kilburn Glow, which is a water lily. And it's got this amazing color. It's kind of like a magenta-y, sort of yellowy, but there's some kind of weird reflective thing in the petals, and it really does seem as if it's glowing. Like it's just a beacon on the plot at the moment, where a lot of the colors are a little bit more subdued, and this Kilburn Glow is quite fantastic. And I was thinking I need to redo my existing dahlia tubers, because I am leaving them in the ground this winter to avoid the total chaos in my house last winter. But I didn't do what Richard suggested, and he said, when you're planting a rose, do a double staggered row and then have a nice wide path between the rows. And for some reason, some part of my brain just completely ignored that, and I just did single straight rows with what I thought was a sensible sized path down the middle, not realizing just how big some of these plants were going to get. And they've had a great time on the plot. I mean, some of them are absolutely enormous, a lot bigger than Richard's. So I need to replant them into this double staggered spacing, and then definitely have a wider path. Probably not wide enough. Well, would I be able to get a wheelbarrow down? I don't even really need to get a wheelbarrow down, but that'd be quite nice, because some of the paths you just can't get down at all. And so you end up trying to pick from sort of one end or another, and all got a bit messy. So I do need to do that. And then obviously get those guys into the ground as well, along with everything else. It's all suddenly just become incredibly busy. So the rest of the week, well, that is going to be me. I mean, business as usual. I've got some jobs to do, and oh crikey, the battery's going on. That hang on one second. Um, oh, I'll see if that works. Oh, there we go. I've got some other jobs to do, which keeps me away from the plot, but hopefully I will be able to fit some more planting in this week. Either way, I will be back on Friday with an update on all the latest news, and I very much hope that you will come back and join me, because you are always welcome on this cut flower journey with me. All right, catch you later in the week. All the best.